right, guys, welcome to the trainer feed. Just as an intro, we're going to talk about a couple of things today. We're going to start with COVID vaccines, or the possibility of some COVID vaccines. We'll see what's up with that. We talk about protein shakes and trying to bulk up. It's my lifelong problem, forever small. Then we're going to also talk about general population and programming plyometrics, fighting fatigue or overtraining syndrome, ego lifting, and we're going to end on some animal flow. So stay tuned.
Exactly. How's everyone feeling so far on a shitty ass Friday here in New York City?
Yeah. Listen, man, I was bouncing back in and out of like depression this past week or so with all this stress from, everything. And then, the weather started becoming crappy, and then it was just like a downward spiral. And then the lockdowns. I was like, damn, is this what I'm supposed to look forward to? It's supposed to be Christmas. And what happened to Tim Allen and Santa Claus?
Ain't happening.
But you know why? You know why? You want to know why that's happening?
Why?
Because people don't wear a fucking mask.
True.
Not
wrong.
I was talking.
Wear a mask for 5 minutes.
Don't yell into the mic there, people.
While you go buy groceries. That's 5 minutes of your life.
You make a valid point. I was talking to a friend from London yesterday, and I said, I assume London is pretty savvy or just sensible in terms of everyone's wearing masks even when you're outside. He said, obviously it's like the rule is recommended when you're going to a grocery store or whatever, but he said as soon as you're outside, most people aren't wearing them. So I feel whereas here in New York, everyone is wearing them inside and out. You still get, I feel, the 5% of people that aren't wearing them. I don't know. I mean,
I'm wondering like what it's like on a national level, right? Because the U.S. obviously we were going through this thing where Trump kind of left it up to the governors to decide what they want to do in each and every state, and then I guess depending on the governor, they gave autonomy to the mayors or whatever. Not in this state, but I wonder what it's like over there in England. Is it something similar? Like I know the prime minister probably has like all the weight or something like that, right?
So my understanding is every part of the country is split up into regions, hotspots or like fewer number of cases. So if you're the way we have it in the States, where if you go from one state to another, where it's a high risk state, like for example, the highest one right now is Texas, I believe, at least last time I checked. New York was number 4. Then they have different regions, and it's roughly the same sort of deal as they have here. If you go to a region that's of a higher risk or where numbers are being, you're seeing higher numbers of cases, then you have to quarantine for the 2-week period. I did have someone I work with the other day say they don't believe in the 2-week quarantine period. I'm not going to say who. But I didn't actually respond. I'm just not, when people are going to say those things, I'm just not going to respond. I'm going to look at you. I'm just not saying anything because I think that that should say everything to my response. So it's a little frustrating. This thing isn't going away. If you think that's, I'll stop here because I could go on. But it's just a little concerning that people think, it's just a little concerning that people think it's not. Again, we've said this from the beginning. No one with a mask. No one says, "Oh my, I love wearing a mask." I'd be very surprised with people. No one wants to wear a mask, right? And one of my clients, who's very close with an orthopedic, like he's been friends with him his whole life, his passing comment was, "You never get used to wearing one." He's been wearing one for his profession for over 20, 30 years. His comment was, "You never get used to wearing one." So it's to say that it doesn't get any easier and they have to wear one for their work. Angel, I can imagine what you told us about Sandra's whole setup when she goes into work. It's pretty something. So it's just a little alarming that there is that mindset with some people, but it's we'll see. Hopefully, I don't know if you guys have read much about the vaccine and what the conditions. Do you guys sound familiar with what the conditions of the vaccine would have to be under in terms of temperature? And then in terms of administration, do you guys know a little bit about that?
I know about the minks.
All I know is that shit's about to go down.
You heard about the minks?
And I don't know. I haven't heard about that.
Get ready.
Can I elaborate a little bit?
Go ahead.
So, I don't want to take too long from the subjects we want to cover today, but so my friend who's in London as well, same friend, we're talking to him yesterday, and he was talking because he works in the health. Oh my god, I'm gonna butcher it. He works in the health industry anyway, so he was telling me how when they work alongside GPs, that the biggest challenges with this vaccine is it has to be stored at minus 80 degrees Celsius. And it has to be. Oh, I thought someone was knocking on my door. I'm sorry. It has to. So anyway, so it has to be.
Kidnap you from the trainer.
No, someone's knocking on my door. Well, there was an incident with a resident where there was like 10 police officers and 5 paramedics earlier. So I'm a little on edge.
God.
Dude, I was on the elevator with 2 cops yesterday.
Yeah.
I was like, what the hell happened?
Yeah. So it's apparently as a resident was having an episode, and I thought something really bad happened. But anyway, so just on edge. So long story short, the vaccine is supposed to be stored at minus 80 degrees Celsius. It needs to be. This is what he told me, right? It needs to be administered within 5 days, and then even after you administer it to someone, you need to monitor the person you've administered to it for a 15-minute period. So it's not in the case that you can just give it and go, get out, and just like crush people through the numbers of injecting the vaccine. Which
vaccine is this one?
That I believe, to my understanding, I may have misunderstood, so don't quote me on this, was the one that Pfizer. Here we go.
This is what we need.
Call me out. This is where scientists, CDC experts are going to come after me. I believe it's I believe it's the one that Pfizer spoke about being 90% effective.
Okay.
So, but
sorry, go ahead. I'll tell you later.
No. All I was going to say was that was he told me, and I wanted to ask him. And even though I also have a science background, I haven't read enough to know all the ins and outs. But I'm interested I'm more than welcome for people to reach out to us if they know more about it, and or come at me for what might be some loose facts. So
please come at Jacques.
Come at me. I love some interactions.
One of my clients, you guys know her, but she's a surgeon, and we were chatting about Pfizer and all that stuff, and she was saying, I don't remember correctly. Who is it? Do you guys know who said that it's 90% effective? Did Pfizer themselves?
I want to say,
because if Pfizer themselves said it, then I'm inclined not to be 100% with it. You know, any company is going to want to say it's 90% effective.
But you can't say you're 100% effective though. Any doctor will tell you this as well. With a surgery, they'll never give you 100% guarantee.
No. I know, but what I'm saying is, are independent sources saying that the Pfizer vaccine is up to 90% effective, or is it actually Pfizer that's saying that? Because if that's the case, then I would rather them have other independent sources say that it's 90% effective, right? I mean, I don't know.
I'd have to check. I'm sorry for our listeners who are probably thinking I was giving you a full CDC equivalent announcement. I'm sorry. I'll have to check.
Jacques, our resident doctor here with the MS in chemistry.
Masters in chemistry. Those who can believe it.
From England, so that's not,
Don't ask me how I got through it, but
you cheated.
No, I didn't cheat. I just struggled. All right, do we want to get into the subjects for today before we may have lost some listeners in the first 10 minutes of ranting about the state of...
I feel like 20% of every episode with all 3 of us is just
ranting
about COVID. It's ranting about COVID. That's what it is.
Oh, that's funny.
But I need some help with protein shakes and bulking. I know that I went through a couple of protein shakes before, and different recipes and things like that. Not necessarily like brand, like which protein to get or anything like that. Oh man, remember that?
Yeah, it was the big red tank, like the big red thing.
So I need something that's like easy, but something that's effective at the same time. So I've been rocking with some regular whey protein isolate after workouts, and then whey protein concentrate with like some peanut butter, like in between meals and stuff like that. But have you guys had any experience with that? Any luck?
David, do you want to go first, or?
So my bulks consist of just from when I used to do the whole bulking and cutting phase like years ago. Now I don't do that much, but it came down to just eating just a shit ton of calories, basically. And I think for some people it's tough. It is very difficult for some people, especially if you're always very active, because it would just like go right through you. But I don't know, when I have a client that always asks about bulking and stuff like that, I just recommend trying to eat as much as they can, and maybe, bumping up the fats just because they do have more calories than your typical protein.
That actually lays off where I wanted to piggyback as well. I don't necessarily myself have a supplement that I go to. I've felt that it tends to be more about how many calories or how much food I consume based on what David was saying as well. And I think it's a interesting point. David mentioned the natural fats. I feel if this is sort of a similar conversation we have with our clients, where when you analyze what you eat every day, when you look at every meal, if you feel that you have enough fats, enough proteins, enough carbs, there's no right or wrong. It's just depending on how we feel. I want to relate to what you're saying about feeling colder in the gym. That's what you mentioned the other day when you texted us, right?
Nah. I mean, yes, but it wasn't. I think I'm always running cold. Or what is it? Yeah, I'm running cold. So even in like hot weather, like I've always been like fine. Like,
but it was when you were at the gym the other day that you mentioned it. I feel like that was perhaps some
because
relation.
the gym is like a colder environment. Although like last time I was there, it was pretty hot, but I think it was just because it was humid or something like that.
So a bit of the humidity can play into it. But I want to it's interesting you say that, because I felt like I haven't gone on an in-body in so long. However, I feel that the numbers, or even you can just see how your body looks. And I definitely feel that I've lost some body weight, or at least some body fat. And I think if I judged based on the weather was, how many layers to wear, if I've gone with the layers and the number of layers I've gone in the past for how cold, how warm it is, I'm feeling colder than I was in the previous years. And I think it's a significant, or it's a suggestion that I've dropped body fat percentage. And I'm now realizing, oh, I'm colder because I have less body fat. So it's interesting you bring that up. And now I'm feeling a bit myself. I would really go back to what David was saying about eating more food. Whenever clients have come to me about asking, it's not that I don't want to give them a BS answer, but if they're not eating correctly or efficiently, I know that sometimes shakes can help consumption. But bottom line is, and this is not a stab at anyone, this is just my sort of thought process. I think as long as the meals are in there, then you can consider having bigger portions or more of one macronutrient in your meals. But I also was going to suggest the peanut butter. You mentioned you're having peanut butter. That's something I put in as well for my smoothies. And maybe
so pretty much no help on the protein shake recipe.
So I also,
it's okay.
like,
it's all right. I'll just keep eating I'll eat 2 Tupperwares of what I eat. A gallon.
Maybe you should have.
Drink a gallon of milk a day.
I used to do that. That shit was rough. I used to do that.
Do that for 3 weeks.
So what I used to do was I used to have like a breakfast kind of like shake to go with like my oatmeal and stuff like that, like just up the calories. And it used to have milk in it. I think it was milk, protein, peanut butter, chia seeds, or something like that. Banana.
Do you have milk or not?
Do I have milk?
Regular dairy milk?
Can I have it? I think dairy is probably harder for me to digest. Okay. But it's,
you're gonna water your oats.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing. I have a lot of watered oats and stuff like that. Although like there is obviously dairy and whey protein.
What is your serving of oats, if you don't mind me asking, in the morning?
It's probably like
pre-cooked.
Pre-cooked is probably like half a cup to 3/4 of a cup.
Yeah, so maybe have a full cup. So maybe small. We spoke about those modifications. Why is that funny?
This shit dry as fuck, bro.
So what do you add to your oats?
Blueberries, trail mix. So it's like raisins, dried cranberries, almonds, walnuts, cashews, shit like that. Vanilla.
So do you ever? vanilla extract. There's also something, I did this a few years ago. Whatever you have your smoothie you mentioned. So there's two ways you can go about doing this. That smoothie mix, maybe once you've mixed everything, put a bit into your oats. It gives a bit of a sweeter flavor, but it's a bit more bearable than just pure oats of nuts. Because I'm really guilty when I have my oats. I probably put a little too much honey. I put like a lot of honey in, and it just, for me, I hear what you're saying. It's like oats are kind of dry unless there's like something sweet enough to help with it. But then the other thing I would do is the night before I would mix whatever fruit, the peanut butter. I also put ground ginger for the anti-inflammation purposes.
Wait. You put ground ginger into your oats?
So I typically, but you gotta listen closely because you didn't hear all I said. So when I make a smoothie, if I was to make overnight oats, for example, everything I'd make in a smoothie in terms of like the blueberries, bananas, crushed ginger, peanut butter, some protein powder, mix it all in with water or almond milk, whichever. And then the next overnight, mix it with a cup of oats or half a cup of oats. And the next day, if you put it in the microwave, whatever, then it's a different taste than just pure oats with the water, the milk, and added nuts. It's just something I did back then, and I liked it for a while. I mean, what did I do? I think and it's crazy. I even added a bit of Nutella in some of my oatmeal. I know that sounds really wild, but well, it's something I did for a little bit. And it made eating oats easier for me. So I think there's no wrong way about it. Bottom line, I think if you could find a way that, I feel that Tori spoke about this as well when she spoke about making better decisions or modifying things that we eat, saying that if we had the vegetables, even if it's with some sauce, as long as the macronutrients you're having are there, it's still a good direction to take off from. So sorry we couldn't give you like a specific supplement, Angel, but
no, I wasn't looking for a specific supplement. I was just looking for recipes.
Give you my old oatmeal recipe.
Yeah, because I have oatmeal recipes from back in the day. I guess I just got to go back to that. Because the issue with eating a large portion for me personally is that I get full after I eat my portion and I don't want to continue eating. And I could continue eating just for the purpose of intaking calories, but it's harder for me mentally. So what I like to do is I like to use like shakes or something like that to have either in between meals or right before a meal. So that way it's like I don't feel full directly after and I still have like a window where I can increase my calories as opposed to just like eating more of what I eat, which is, pretty diverse, but like it's just hard to eat enough already. So I don't want to continue to like just sit there and work on a meal because I used to do that as well, but that shit was rough. Like it would take me like, I don't know, like 30, 45 minutes. I think a lot of us have been there, just like sitting with a plate because you need to like continue to eat and you need to continue to build muscle, and it's just rough. So makes it a little bit easier for me.
You should try so what I used to do, oatmeal, I would put it on a stovetop, put some, old-fashioned oats, like a cup or two, put milk in it, let that like start simmering and boiling, and then add coconut oil, like half a tablespoon or half a teaspoon of coconut oil. Just stir that up and add some bananas, some blueberries, and just let that keep stirring that up. Put some agave or something in it, and just eat that, and then a glass of milk on the side.
You have a glass of milk as well as have all the oats?
There you go. No, I didn't have the glass of milk, but I'm saying you could add the glass of milk.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, add it.
I wasn't sure.
Chocolate milk after a workout will be great because you have extra calories.
We'll see. We'll check in 2021 and we'll see where I'm at.
Angel's like twice as wide.
Yeah. Angel hates us right now. Like, he's like, you guys ain't do shit for me now.
Nah, it's all good. I'm gonna go back to my old recipe.
See, we weren't any help.
All right, let's switch gears. Plyometrics and general population. So when do you guys implement plyometrics, and is it okay for general population or is it not okay?
Go ahead, David.
I don't. I mean, what do you define as plyometrics, or what is it defined as typical?
Well, you can find the definition, but it's somewhat along the lines of explosive patterns, right? Explosive movements, dynamic.
Body weight or weighted?
That's a good question. We can discuss both.
Yeah.
I feel that we see more of the body weight ones.
Yeah, you hardly see like weighted unless you're in like an athletic training facility.
Facility.
With body, I think with body weight plyometrics, I typically don't add that on my in my sessions unless maybe if you consider skaters with the Viper a plyometric.
It's technically loaded.
Yeah.
Right. But other than that, I don't typically do much plyometrics unless the client does that on their own. I could box jump here and there. I used to do box jumps years ago, but I used to have a bench and then the box in front of me. I think the box is like 20 inches, a little more, just nothing too crazy. And you just sit down on the bench, and that reduces the stretch cycle, right? And then you just try to explode up onto the box. So that's what I used to do back a long time ago.
But with by yourself, right? Like not with clients?
Because not with the client, because I feel that, my clients, a lot of my clients at least don't want to do that. They're just not something they want to do. And I think
go ahead.
So I think, that's just something that if they want to get stronger, I'm not going to have them do plyometrics. I'm going to have them do stuff to get stronger. And
I'm sorry, I didn't want to go ahead.
But yeah, I forgot I was going to go somewhere else with it, but I forgot.
I was going to jump in and say it also depends on what the client wants to do.
Wow.
In the sense that if the client just wants to get stronger, some examples, and I love these stories just as much as any of them, right? Where I have a client, she's awesome. And for her, some of the training has been as simple as learning to pick something up from the floor and putting it back down, right? And that's just purposeful training for her everyday life. And that's so for that instance or another client where we're just trying to move better, move well, then plyometrics may not necessarily come, and that's not a wrong. It's whether it's appropriate. If the person, like we said, is in a sport specific training mode or has a season coming up, and it's also fair to say that just because some things have always been done, if you break down the exercise, if you were to analyze some of the exercises, I'm sure you could overanalyze or criticize some exercises where you see something, let's say box jumps, but they're an offensive lineman in the NFL. It's not to say they wouldn't need explosiveness, but could you, if you're a running back or a wide receiver, 100%, that feels a bit more relatable, more transferable, but not necessarily for offensive linemen. Now, I haven't played in the NFL. I'm sure people can come up and argue against me, but that's just an example where I think that's maybe not too specific, not too relatable. So, but if the person is, like we mentioned, the Viper skaters, a loaded plyometric, right? Where, someone is looking to improve their endurance when they're playing hockey and they're going back to camp next year or whatever it is. I think that's a very justifiable reason to have that pattern in the workout.
I would counter argue, and I would break down like the movements, right? Like I would say, is jumping a plyometric exercise, right? And everybody would kind of nod their head yes. Is skipping a plyometric exercise? And everybody would kind of like nod their head yes. Do you need to do those? Are those functional movement patterns? Should a person be able to jump? Should a person be able to skip? I guess it depends on like the person, but generally speaking, I think most people can benefit from it, for the exception of like special conditions or special populations, which is not general population. Special populations is kind of like cast over to the other side. Maybe if you have an injury, geriatrics, things like that. But I think general population could benefit from plyometrics, and I don't see it being like that bad. I mean, everybody thinks like ball slams or, jumping over hurdles and stuff like that. It doesn't have to be anything like that, but just being able to like absorb forces and things and like kind of translate it a little bit differently can be beneficial, especially like in the real world, right? Like you're running to catch a train and you skip a step or something like that. You need to be able to absorb that and not just like fall on your ass, right? Because then you're assed out.
Right.
You miss your train and you're fucked up.
100%. And I do want to tie in with something there important is it goes along with even non-plyometric exercises can be done incorrectly or done in a non-safe way. And those are going to risk, you're going to have just as high a risk as injury for that as if it was a plyometric. So we're not trying, at least I'm not trying to suggest that plyometrics have a high relation to injury. That's not at all. I strongly feel that any movement that's done inefficiently or in a non-safe manner has a higher risk for injury. So like you said, if someone is 29 or however, maybe a 40-year-old, for example, does plyometrics and they have no history of health issues, orthopedic. When I asked my doctor about my recovery, the second or third one, I asked if there's anything I shouldn't do, and I was being specific. I was like, should I not squat at a certain depth? Should I not deadlift? Should I not do this? The only thing he wanted me to not do was run. So I said, really? Even box jumps? He said, yeah, box jumps are fine. So that was his, not his theory, but that was his suggestions towards no running, just the constant impact was too much, but box jumps were fine. But everyone knows within reason, if you know your own body. When I've gone to CrossFit classes, if there's box jumps, if I'm feeling great and I know it's not a problem. However, if the whole workout is lunges, squats, and it's just so leg dominant, then I know, okay, let me just switch it out for a step up. I'm not competing here for anything high profile. So we'll go into it later on, but ego lifting can come into that as well. No one's going to think any less of you if you go to a class and the exercise is a box jump or an explosive movement and you do something in more control. No one's going to think any less of you. And that can be a conflicting issue in classes. I've seen it.
I was also going to say, just like if your client has a kid or something like that, right? Like how many times do you see kids running around or they drop something and they just go into the middle of the street and you just need to like grab them and just like pull them in? Are you going to say that that's not like explosive or that's not plyometric or anything like that? Like if it wasn't that, then it would be a different result, right? So, I think and you can also make the argument for like agility and like what is if you're training somebody like depth drops, box jumps, things like that, does that translate into cutting, or does that translate into jumping forward and pulling something back? There can be arguments for and there can be arguments against, because it's not necessarily this is what you're doing, but at the same time you are training the musculature in a plyometric way, in kind of like a stretch reflex sort of way. So I don't know.
I did want to jump in on one last thing as well, where if the most common plyometric exercise we see in the gym is what? Box jumps? Can we agree that's probably the most common one?
I think so. Aside from jump rope, that's debatable.
Yeah, you're right. That's a very valid point. I never forget when someone broke this down to me. Again, there's never anything wrong with box jumps, but there are possibly and arguably 3 or 4 regressions prior to a box jump, right? Like you mentioned, like a forward jump. What were the other ones? Like
I would say
you can do like a forward jump, lateral jump,
forward jump,
depth drops.
A depth drop. That was the one I was thinking of. So people can, or at least the fitness professionals I've spoken with about these progressions, regressions, I have commonly spoken about 3 to 4 exercises or patterns that could or most likely should be done before a box jump. And that's what we've spoken in previous episodes, where you can get to that point, but if you want to go to 100, you can't go from 0 to 100. You got to go to 10, 20, 30, whatever it is. But also part of it, and maybe this ties in ego lifting, but why do you want to do that? If a client, if you speak to a client, there's no wrong in it, and that's never the opinion we try and quote here, but if you want to do it just cause, again, that's totally fine. But usually if you find that someone has a why, because I recovered from a surgery, or because I never had this kind of mobility when I was a kid. Now that I'm an adult and I function better than ever, this is important for me to be able to show. This for me signifies optimal performance, right? As long as you're able to dig deeper and find that person's why and there's a reason. And often it usually helps you have a better connection with the client, I feel. If you find someone's, when I was younger or when this happened and I never fully recovered or I was never able to do this, there's usually milestones in there somewhere. So sometimes those stories come in. But I just think it's, as long as you ask the person what the reason they want to do it for, no right or wrong, but it can just help paint a bigger picture. That's all.
All right. What about ego lifting? some tips on trying to avoid ego lifting.
Don't do it.
What is ego lifting? Everything. You go in the gym, you see a young bull getting after it, and you're just like, man, I used to do that back in the day. You know what? I'm going to show him. And then boom, sleeves come off, wrist straps go on. 2 hernias later, you don't even know what happened. All you know is you passed out, and the ambulance is coming to pick you up. So how do we stop it? That's a good question. Everybody's quiet. Everybody's like, shit, I don't know.
I can have a...
Man, they gotta go therapy for that.
I was going to chip in quickly before if you guys thought of something as well, where, perhaps you mentioned you see someone else lifting and, it's another male. Is it an alpha male thing where, no, I can't possibly be the second strongest male. I have to be the strongest here. Is there a territorial thing where you come into a gym and I personally am not the strongest guy ever when I walk into a gym, and that's okay. I'm fine with that. I understand that. I think if you listen to your body, and you have to know that if someone in there is lifting heavier than you, you have to understand that maybe they've been lifting heavier than you for 10, 20 years. They haven't maybe just gone into a gym, but you also get the other end of the spectrum where someone has never lifted a day in your life, and they come to work out with you, and they're stronger than you in everything you've been doing. That I've seen that too. I've seen people that have never worked out that come work out with me. They're stronger than me with everything. I'm like, fuck. Like, I've been working out. Or the memes that say, oh, you work out 5 times a week, you must be ripped or so strong. And I'm like, yeah, no.
There's also ego cardio as well, just so you guys know. So there's people on the treadmill who will get on the treadmill right next to you. All the other, well, maybe pre-COVID. They'll get on the treadmill right next to you, and they'll just say, they won't say anything, but they'll just smoke you, or they'll just like be going on longer or faster than you, and you're just like, of all the treadmills, why do you have to pick this one? And then why are you going to try to like outpace me, or why are you going to try to do this? Same thing with the bike.
You're insecure.
I think it's insecurities too on some levels.
So you leave the gym and then you go see a therapist.
Yep. Next.
I think what it comes from as well, because I've been there before where, you feel like somebody's trying to pull one on you, and somebody's trying to like make you lift more or not lift more, like you're doing your set, and then somebody just comes and then you're just like, the little row machine, they just take the little notch and they put it at the end, and they just start going after the stack, and like, all right, you can have it now, and you're just like, all right, well, that was cool, but I was here before. I think it just comes from sticking to your plan. I think if you go into a gym with a game plan, probably 80 to like 70, maybe 80 to 70% of the chance that you'll ego lift is going to be out the window, because you have a plan and you know that if you veer too far left or right, you're going to end up in a bad spot. So that's what I would recommend. I would recommend just like sticking to a plan or something like that. That helped me.
Some program,
it also plays a role into trainers telling their clients to do more when their clients are like, nah. It's like I've seen times in instances where people are working out, and then they're going really heavy for them, maybe like a 5 rep max or something, and then later on the person's like, oh, add more, like, come on, add like 10 more pounds. And they just keep like pushing and pushing, and the person's like, no, like, I can't do anymore. I think that's another form of ego lifting too, but on the side of the person that's sort of like egging you on to do it.
And there are more progressions than just load. That's something I felt has been very important with some clients that I've taken on that have had some certain styles of training, where there's a couple clients, and they love this as well. I'm honest with them, and they say, depends on the goal. But if they say, oh, it's light, okay, I'm not going to put an extra 10, 25. Or the other thing sometimes happens where the form, you're not going to achieve perfect form on every single rep of a pattern, right? If you did 10 squats, there might be, what's up?
I disagree.
Okay, I'm going to get back to you on that. So if you have a client, no, let's address it right now. So if you have a client and they have done 10 squats, you're telling me every single rep looks identical?
First of all, nobody can replicate the same movement ever, period. It's not the same.
That's one.
Oh.
Okay. So answer my question. You're telling me if you have a client or yourself does 10 reps, you're telling me every single rep looks identical.
It should. If not, we're regressing.
So I'm going to regress you even though you felt it was fine.
Yep.
All right. I want to see that program then.
All right, cool.
There's no
Dude,
if you have somebody doing a squat, like nobody can do, we're not machines, right? So
That's
you're
what
gonna
I'm
your hips are gonna move forward at a certain time, or your head is gonna drop down, or your shoulders are gonna come back. Like every single breath we take is going to be different than the next, and therefore every movement that we have is going to be different. And that's not even looking at it from a neuromuscular level, right? Like if you take into like the muscle firings and like what's going on neurologically, that's completely different, but the signaling and everything is not going to be exactly the same. Therefore, it's not going to be the same. We can try to like strive
You
for
want that. I
like,
agree.
don't
You
move your
want
feet.
that.
Why are you moving your feet between rep number 3 and rep number 4, right? Like keep your feet in the same spot or whatever.
That's what
like
I'm saying.
That's different. That's different.
What the point I was trying to get at is, if you, let's say you're working at 225, you're doing 4 sets of 10 of back squats, David, right? Let's say you did it today at 7 a.m., right? And you typically do it on Thursdays at 4 p.m., right? The fact that you're doing it a day later or a different time of day, those themselves are variables that may explain why your pattern doesn't look exactly the same. But we all know you can do 225 4x10. We've seen you do it the last week on a Thursday at 4 p.m., right? For example. What I'm trying to say is, I don't think if you had in those 10 reps, your third rep and maybe your 10th rep weren't the best. Is that enough to say you shouldn't walk all that way anymore?
But then why are you doing 10 if you can't do the first 3 or 4 right?
No. I said if your third and 10th one. I didn't say if your first 3 or 4. So if reps 1, 2, and then 4 to 9 look great, but reps 3 and 10, maybe you didn't brace enough, which is totally normal. That there might be, right. That's kind of what I was trying to get at. It wasn't saying you do 10 reps and everyone look dire and you should, that wasn't my point. It was to say that there's going to be a rep in there or two that like, okay, that wasn't my best one. Where I was getting to that is sometimes I felt in my training history where if a client had reps 1 through 10, let's say, for example, and only maybe 5 of them are where we want to be, and maybe taking a bit of weight off is an option, and maybe I feel that it's not so much the weight, maybe it's the neuromuscular control, whatever it is. That's something where I'll put my hand up and say, okay, let's own the weight, but let's get 10 completely clean ones before we can increase the weight. That being said, something I like to, again, challenge the central nervous system a bit more in the sense that, okay, I don't know if it was in the Kettlebell Athletics Level 2 workshop that we kind of touched on this, but changing your stance, that split stance, it changes a lot and it's very difficult for a lot of people to work with. And I think that's something that has been a great progressive tool I've used personally, as opposed to adding more weight. And especially when we speak about how we've worked out in lockdowns where we haven't had that many tools at our disposal to increase the load. I personally haven't. So that's been something that I would do is okay, well, I have this one tool. How do I progress it? Alter my base of support. It's very simple. Dan Daly, who we hopefully will have on at some point soon, said in a very early on workshop I attended, and he said how much different changing your base of support is. Even if you have a stagger stance, if it's 2 feet on, but it's a wider, narrow, those little things can make a big difference. But you haven't done that much different in the sense of modifications. They can just have a bigger significant outcome. So that's I know I kind of like went on a rabbit hole there. Well, that was what I was trying to say. Bottom line was, instead of adding the load, change how it feels on the body, change something, that external load, leave it as what it is, leave it as the form. So not always having to change the style of tool, but the actual load itself, and then change how you lift it. That's something that I felt can not necessarily just say again.
Based on your goal.
Yeah. 100%. If you just want to, again, that's very important as well. I must say, is depending on what your goal is, 100%. Sorry, guys, a long rabbit hole.
No, that's all good. All right, let's change it to the last piece. What's the last piece? Overtraining.
Overtraining, yeah.
All right, so fighting chronic fatigue or overtraining syndrome. Like, Have we ever? I know I've gotten overtraining. Go ahead, David.
I call it under recovery. I personally rather call it under recovery. You know, just because you're probably not getting enough recovery. You're not sleeping enough. You're not eating well. Maybe, you know, you got other stress factors going on that's causing you not to, you know, do it. I think maybe overtraining in the sense of you working out like 7 times a week and then going like a 90% every fucking day. That's like a different thing. It's where like, all right, well, you probably don't have a program going on.
It's tough too because those two tie in, like the ego lifting and then like the overtraining tie in together in a weird sense, because you could have a plan and then you're just like, oh nah, this young bull, I gotta get him. And then all of a sudden, bam, overtraining, under recovery, straight to the hospital. So how do we fight it? Like Rabdo. I know that for me personally, like, again, going back to the plan, like having the plan probably helps avoid a lot of problems, right? Because if there's no plan, you just walk into a gym like, oh man, I wonder what I'm going to do today. You know what? My legs are feeling all right. I'm going to just start lunging. And then from lunges, you go, oh, you know what? I need to get my arms bigger. And you see people in the gym.
I'm sure that happens,
too, right? Like they're just bouncing from thing to the next. And they're just like looking around, just like, you know what? I need to do some of this. And then they just
let me get the hundreds and just shrug, or I don't know, whatever they want to do. I like I'm sorry, David, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to try and do it in brief, but when Michel Dalcour, the creator of the Viper, he spoke about training in the 4 quadrants. And he spoke about if we have the 4 quadrants being loaded linear, unloaded linear, then loaded multiplanar, and unloaded multiplanar, right? So how many of us, when we look at that quadrant, maybe we should do a graphic of this on our Instagram, how many of our workouts or how many of us are walking out on the loaded linear? So that's squats, deadlifts,
pre-COVID,
benches. Pre-COVID, maybe, if you want, yeah.
Because after COVID, everybody started doing some unloaded shit.
Yeah, see?
Everyone's an animal flow expert now. It's like, it's insane.
Don't even get me started, man.
Dude, you see so much of it, man. It's not even done correctly.
I'm not even gonna comment.
Do animal flow, and it's like, it's tough. It's hard, I think, to like get those small little things going, you know, when you have shoulders internally rotated and you have hips that are all fucked up.
But there's so many internal cues when you do it. Yeah. Like you mentioned your shoulder. So with that side kick out, you should be screwing that arm into the ground, like completely screwing it. So I did
externally rotate yourself, and you have people that are it doesn't look good, and I don't know.
Yeah. So there's things to that as well, but it's fair to say that I've done exercises pre-workshop and then come out of it. Oh man, there was a few things I didn't know. And look, and this is being truthful. When I did the workshop, I came out of it. There's still some things I wasn't completely on. So when I got my feedback for when I passed my certification with Animal Flow, there were little things that they wanted to focus on, like little thing where like the hand, I would have the hand here. The hand has to be like back here. And there's so many specific things. But going back to the 4 quadrants before I ramble on.
Spear with your hand. I can see the cues right now.
My analogy is if you have like a bow and arrow and you're pulling the arrow back.
And this Everdeen going back like this.
You gotta do the fingers like that too. Is that part of the workshop?
Do you know where that? Do you know where that? Do you know what? You guys know where that comes from?
All right.
Let's find out.
So archers, I believe it was Englishmen in the. Oh my god, I'm gonna fuck this up. I think they were fighting the French, and the archers would do this, right? It's an originally from saying, "I have my 2 fingers, I can still fire arrows." That's where it comes from.
Oh, like if you're wounded or something like that, like you.
So if you're, no, David, if you're an archer, they will cut your fingers off because if you with these are your most important fingers in your hand.
Who would cut your fingers off? Like your enemies?
Your enemies.
Oh, okay.
So it'd be like, oh, you're an archer. Let me cut your fingers off. So Game of Thrones, he loses his hand, right? He has to fight with his worst hand.
With these two.
Why wouldn't they just kill you?
I'm dead serious.
I'm not trying to be whatever, but if they're your enemy,
if you're a prisoner of war or something, it's like, okay, let's chop your fingers off. Now you're no good to them. So anyway, but that's kind of, I digress. But that's where it comes from. Anyway, Animal Flow, and so, but let's think about it. So obviously now everyone is Animal Flow expert, right? Good for them. No comment. But how many of us would do loaded linear in the gym? Or is it fair to say most of our workouts would be loaded
Yeah,
linear,
that's the majority of it.
Mm-hmm.
right?
At least mine.
So, well, that's something I ask clients. If you look at a program, how many days are unloaded linear? Like, what would you consider? I just feel that quadrant, excuse me, of unloaded multiplanar is. Could you say running is in there? Probably. I think you could, right? Depending if you're trail running, if you're straight road running. I don't know if you could say that. What would you say?
I was gonna say, how does this tie into overtraining though?
Because the style of training is very important to overtraining. If you're loaded linear every single day, how does your body how can your body teach their own? I think it's healthy for you to have unloaded days of movement and working out.
Rest day,
Okay,
active
and
rest.
right,
Well, rest
and
days,
that will
but
help
even
with
I think it helps if-
overtraining.
Right, and I think of long-term longevity in training. But I also think when you spoke about rest day, I think if you did a few, like, I'm also okay with if someone asks me about rest day, can I do a little bit of yoga? If you're not going crazy, yeah. But the whole point of a rest day usually is to do very, very little. But I'm also an advocate of doing unloaded bodyweight movements on a walking day. When someone says, "Oh, it's too easy," and let's say in quarantine someone said, "Oh," and I've heard this quite recently as well, saying, "Oh, I couldn't work out outside of a gym. I have to be in a gym." I was like, "Well, if you were in New York during the whole lockdown, you wouldn't have really had much of a choice, right? You didn't have a choice. You had to buy your own equipment. You had to go whatever you're creative." But the point I was trying to say was, when people come up to you and say body weight is easy, or unless you're like a calisthenics like genius and whiz, and you can like just be flying above, which hats off to you.
It's calisthenics.
What did I say?
Calisthenics.
All right, yeah,
It's impressive.
yeah, whatever. Butchered that one.
Masters in chemistry.
Calisthenics. Calisthenics. So, without butchering it again, if someone finds body weight is easy, bottom line is there's always ways of modifying it. You know, people feel that because you can't modify a body weight exercise with load, overall increased load, then it's easy. Okay, do it for tension, you know. And then when you mention about animal flow, some of the most basic movements require that your knees, when you're doing, or your butt, when you're above the ground in some positions, that you're not even an inch off from the ground. Like, you can only put a piece of paper on. And when I've been doing it with newer clients recently, they're like, "Oh my God, that's so much harder." Or where your knees should be below your belly when you do a movement. It's like nothing. But whenever you see someone do a movement, or you see not say a class or an exercise where it's done more modified, I wouldn't say wrong. If your hips are higher up and your knees are like 3 inches from the ground, of course that's easy. That's so easy. Try it with your knees belly off the ground. You change the pattern. And if it's something as simple as that, or okay, hold it for me. And trust me, when I did the Animal Flow workshop,
You know, my man is going in on animal flow.
I am like
Son,
Animal Flow pro right now.
We get it, bro. We get it. Animal flow is, listen, wait. I know you're excited right now. We got to stop this train. This train is going off the rails.
Dog's mad
Slow
red
down.
now. Like,
I don't know who said anything about animal flow. I was just talking about overtraining syndrome.
all I said was everyone's an animal flow expert now, and
Yeah, and then
got me.
you
You
just
got
went
me.
on this rant. It goes back to one of the previous episodes where we spoke about how David winds up Jacques, and then Jacques just goes off the rails. This is a prime example.
He didn't wind me up. That was just something I've been meaning to talk about. So
I
it's
guess.
okay.
I said it with the
so.
intention. I said it with the intention of winding you up.
Apparently, holy smokes. All right, guys. So anyway, we'll wrap this up because
you gotta drink some water, man. Get the sweat off. Your
What's
forehead.
up? The sweat? I'm not
Sweaty ass
sweating.
forehead, shiny ass forehead, man.
No, man, I'm not sweating.
My forehead is shiny. I was wondering why I look so shiny in this damn.
It's called moisturizer, David.
I guess.
I have some recommendations if you need some moisturizer.
All right, so let's wrap this up. Let's wrap this up. All right, guys. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Trainer Feed. Make sure to like, follow, subscribe, all that jazz. And we'll see you next week.
See you guys.
Bye.